5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'm going live now. You should see 4 chairs. You see it? Yeah, then you're just gonna push it live whenever it starts. Well, I'll probably stop. Why don't we do this? Why don't we let's say at 6:55. So you confirm both platforms is working, YouTube and Facebook.
I'm seeing it on YouTube as well.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna hit stop. I will restart it at 6:55, and then we'll just do the same thing, and you'll just push it, and then obviously you have to deal with all the captions and stuff like that. Cool? All right, man. Good deal.
Check. Check 1, 2.
Testing, hello.
Okay. Yeah, I just rolled in, so I was like,
Tacos are absolutely delicious. I am Jeremiah Laurie. I'm with WABA. I'm the admin. Thank you. Let me give a shout out. We got some WABA folks over here. Give a shout out to our WABA folks. Woo! I am going to quickly thank our co-sponsors, and then I'm going to kick it over to Jesse, who is the owner of the bar. And woo! See, he's look at that, a popular guy here. Look at this. You got a lot of fans in the audience, Jesse. Let me thank our co-host, Greater Washington. Can we get a round of applause for Greater Washington? Alex is an amazing timekeeper over here from Greater Washington. Let me quickly thank our co-sponsors, Black Millennials for Flint, Moms Clean Air Force, Coalition for Smarter Growth, the DC Environmental Network, Citizens Climate Lobby, and Sunrise Movement, and Friends of the DC Streetcar. So shout out co-sponsors. We had almost 600 RSVPs. We got a lot of folks who are watching from home tonight. Also, thank everyone for coming out here tonight. And let's get it started. Let me bring up Jesse, who is the owner of the MetroBar, who is graciously hosting us tonight. So thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, Jeremiah. I want to thank you all for coming out to MetroBar tonight. Myself and my other owners are really appreciative of you being here and allowing us to be part of this conversation. We are big fans of transportation, obviously trains, but we are here to celebrate all things local and what makes DC great. So we encourage you to come out and hang out with us, particularly as it gets warmer, and we're just really excited to have this forum here at MetroBar. So I'm going to introduce our two moderators. We've got Amanda Michelle Gomez and Jordan Pascale. I'm going to hand it off to you guys.
Hey, thanks so much, Jesse. Thanks for having us at MetroBar tonight. Thank you, candidates, for joining us for this transportation forum. The DC Council Chair, if you don't know, plays a significant role in lawmaking in the district. They set the legislative agenda, they lead council meetings, they help write the budget and assign committee chairmanships. They also have the power to appoint people to boards and commissions like the Metro Board. So tonight we have this. Phil Mendelson started his career as an advisory neighborhood commissioner in the mid-'80s. There we go. He was elected to the DC Council in 1998, and then in 2012 he took over as council chair and has been re-elected twice in that role, and he lives near Eastern Market.
Hello. All right, this mic works. Good start. So we also have Erin Palmer. She also serves in office, and she's been ANC commissioner for her neighborhood, Tacoma, since 2018. She's also an ethics lawyer and mother of 3. All right, so let's get to the ground rules of tonight's event. For candidates, please make sure you have your people campaigning inside and during the event. So don't pass out literature. Please keep that outside if you do intend to do that. And for the audience, we ask that you please no heckling. And this will be a 2-hour long event. The first hour will be focused on council candidates. Then we'll have a 10-minute break. Y'all can go to the bathroom, get maybe more food, drinks, tip your servers. And then we'll get to the mayoral forum. And just know that these questions tonight were created by us, by sponsors, by audience members. Yeah.
And for this event, it's more of a forum style, so we really want to hear your positions, less of a debate. So Alex over here is going to be keeping time. She'll be using her little bike bell. Can we get that? If your time is up. So transportation things, we keep it that way. We'll have short answer questions, long answer questions, lightning round. We have some of your audience questions that you submitted when you registered. So hopefully we'll cover as much as we can. And we will start with some opening statements. Just a quick minute from, let's start with Commissioner Palmer.
Hello, is this thing on? Thank you so much. I'm Erin Palmer and I'm running for DC Council Chairwoman. I'm a mom, an ethics lawyer by profession, and an advisory neighborhood commissioner in Ward 4. Many of you from my community and advisory neighborhood commission work. We've done Transpo Bingo and Sidewalk Palooza together. We've written letters and resolutions about safe streets infrastructure and public transportation. We've done neighborhood walk and 311 blitzes. We've sat in hours-long council hearings to testify about DDOT oversight. We've attended vigils for people who have died from traffic violence, and that's been devastating and in many ways preventable. I'm running for DC Council Chairwoman to bring new energy, vision, and compassion to DC's challenges, including safe streets and public transportation. I am the only candidate in this race participating in DC's Fair Elections program, which means I'm not accepting any corporate dollars. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And now Chairman Mendelson.
Thank you. I want to thank the sponsors for hosting this event, and I want to thank you all for coming here. Again, I'm Phil Mendelson. One of the issues I want you to look at or think about as you hear us is that this is not just simply a race to be a member of the council. Where am I on my opponent on issues? And I don't know that you're going to see that much distance between us, but this is also a race for the chair of the council, and that is the ability to herd 12 members, herd cats, to try to get the majorities to avoid the kind of gridlock you see in Congress, which is I have over the years. If you look at what we've been able to do with the budget, for example, or some of the controversial bills like universal paid leave, is to get those bills and those difficult bills through the council with majority and sometimes unanimous votes. And that speaks to the skill, my skill as chair, and the skill that you need in whoever is chair of the council. Experience, knowledge of the breadth of issues, as well as the skill in being able to get majorities to find the compromises to get stuff done. I don't know where I am with time. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
All right, thank you for keeping it on time. So we're gonna begin with longer questions, and your answers could be longer. We ask that you keep it to around 2 minutes, and Alex again will be keeping time. So my first question is, Mayor Bowser just released her proposed budget March 16th. What of her transportation budget do you support? What do you oppose? And let's start with Ms. Palmer.
Can you hear me? Thank you so much. Thank you for that question. Mayor Bowser did just release her budget, which has some investments in safe streets and infrastructure, and I think it's a starting point for consideration of the things that we need to really be pushing for, which includes more funding for dedicated, high-quality safe streets infrastructure like bus lanes, and that's not just one-off projects. It's a connection of systems that allows us to move around the city. It's high-quality, reliable service that people can use to get to the store, can use to take their kids to school, can use to get around. We have some investments in Safe Streets infrastructure, but what's missing in the discussion about that is that the money is well spent on mechanisms that actually keep our streets safe and slow down cars. And that also ties to the DDOT oversight that's necessary to make sure that these projects are implemented well. So we can talk about the budget and things that are funded, but an essential part of this is DDOT oversight and oversight of our traffic safety infrastructure.
Yep.
And that ties to leadership on the council as well, and experience in building consensus around these projects, which I have on the ground as an ANC commissioner who worked for years on safe street issues and building coalitions to make these things happen across neighborhoods and in a way that
So what I've learned from my years on the council is that while I have ideas with regard to issues, I'm better informed if I listen to what the public input is. So with the budget, it's the different agencies have gone to the different committees with jurisdiction, like the Committee on Transportation. And that's where we will hear from you all and others with regard to where the budget falls short and where we can be doing more. I think we could be doing more with regard to metro funding and expansion of buses, and to help overcome some of the challenges we've had with loss of ridership. That's my sense, but I want to hear what citizens say, which they will articulate to the Council Committee on Transportation. I also have a sense that while the mayor says that she's doing a lot with regard to bike lanes, not enough or not quickly enough. Again, let's hear from the stakeholders about what we can be doing, what we should be doing, and then the committee will be making recommendations. It comes to the committee as a whole, which I chair. I don't expect I'll be reversing any of what the Transportation Committee recommends. As I said, I think that we should be doing more with regard to public transit. You know, we have a lot of issues in the city with the friction between bicyclists and pedestrians and cars, and one way to deal with that is to get more people using public transportation, to do more with Metro, to do more with our dedicated bus lanes, for example, to do more with increasing headways, to do more with improving the safety of Metro Rail, and I didn't see where I am on time. But that does remind me, because I don't know if there'll be a question about this. I was very much involved. Excuse me, I feel like a singer now. I was very much involved with the creation of the Metro Rail Safety Commission, and even though it's a pain in the butt that the rail cars have been cut back, the fact is that we will have a safer system, and that's a result of the Safety Commission, which I worked with colleagues from Maryland and Virginia through the Council of Governments to get that established.
All right, and we will have some Metro questions later, but right now I want to talk about cars and speeding in our neighborhoods and throughout our city. It seems ubiquitous at this point. How do you plan to slow down speeding vehicles? Aaron, you can start. Commissioner Palmer.
It's green? Thank you so much. Thank you for that question. Speeding cars is ubiquitous, and it's something I experience daily walking around with my children. I take them to school, walking and by bus every day. And we've gotten to the point where when we cross, even in a crosswalk, it's like drivers don't see us. They are literally just looking at other cars, driving down the streets, and we're almost invisible. And I think we have big projects we can do that we need political will for in terms of our arterial roads. But as anyone who has worked on traffic safety issues also knows, it's the little things that we fight for every day. And we do these letters and community petitions and walks and calls with DDOT for four-way stop signs or speed humps or these very basic traffic safety calming mechanisms that really need to be standardized and built into DDOT procedures so they are the norm and the default, and we aren't fighting day after day for the very basics of traffic safety infrastructure. And I think that we can do that through legislation, through oversight of DDOT, through meaningful oversight of DDOT. And one of the things that I have put forward is a DC Council accountability plan, which empowers the DC Council to better make laws and conduct oversight, in part through use of a nonpartisan professional research service and more supports for nonpartisan institutionalized staff and professional staff that can help the council understand safe streets planning and infrastructure and better hold DDOT accountable. Thank you.
Got you. And Chairman Mendelson, in your oversight role as council chair and on the council, how are you holding drivers that go too fast accountable?
Well, the primary function for oversight with regard to transportation, pedestrian safety, bad drivers is with our Committee on Transportation. And it is true that we will see a change next year because Councilmember Che, who is currently chairing that committee, will be stepping down from the council. And so I will be talking with colleagues and making a recommendation to the council who would be the next chair, who would be the primary place for oversight. Yes, I am involved. As I said, I've been involved with transportation issues through the Council of Governments. I used to chair the Transportation Planning Board for the region. But I'm also involved in the council itself. I co-introduced two bills that are pending right now. They were introduced maybe a month ago, 2 months ago. One by Councilmember Nadeau, the other by Councilmember Lewis George. I co-introduced them to require DDOT to change its geometrics, I guess is what I'll call it, in its engineering for our intersections, and take other steps that change the geometry so that our roads will be safer or pedestrians will be more protected and bicyclists as well. The second bill deals more specifically with safety, pedestrian safety around our schools, making the school zones a little bit larger and requiring certain things. There's a lot more that DDOT could be doing and be creative. One of the things that I fault DDOT for is that I don't think that they do any real meaningful analysis about what's going on in the city and looking at best practices from other jurisdictions and applying those practices here. That analysis is just lacking from DDOT. And if it was better and more creative about this, and we can do this through the council with oversight, although in the end it's the mayor who actually is implementing this stuff, I think we could see that our roads are safer for pedestrians and bicyclists, and actually for everybody.
And while we have you, real quick, you mentioned Councilmember Che will be not running for re-election. Who is best suited to run that transportation committee, in your opinion?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because people ask me this question. This is, I believe, March, and I do not discuss committee chairs or chairmanships or committee structure until much later in the year. So if I sound like I'm being evasive on that, it's actually, I don't have an answer for you, but I wouldn't answer it. Thank you.
Commissioner Palmer, well, who do you kind of look up to as a good transportation voice on the council?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I think there are a number of good voices on transportation, including my own council member, Janice Lewis George. But I also think that the decision-making and authority to set committees and appoint committee chairs and barter for chairmanships, that resides exclusively in the council chair as a problematic function of council operations and not really a mechanism for good government. And there should be a more institutionalized, neutral structure for committee appointments, and that can be built collaboratively across the council so that there's not even the appearance of impropriety in terms of trading positions on committees or as committee chairs for desired outcomes, which we have seen alluded to in the past.
Thank you.
Thank you. And on that, let's talk about Vision Zero. I probably don't need to explain it to this group, but the policy adopted by Mayor Bowser to bring traffic deaths to zero by 2024. And it's broadly considered a failure as traffic deaths are increasing. And so my question to you, let's start with Chairman, what will you do not just to reverse this, but to speed up the process of implementing the Vision Zero omnibus bill and other policies that prevent people getting killed in crashes?
Well, I expect I'll be talking to Councilmember Che during the budget process, whether there's anything we could be doing through the budget to help to speed things up. But I also think that the Transportation Committee needs to put more pressure on DDOT. For myself, when I mentioned the Transportation Planning Board, and I'm also at the Council of Governments on their Board of Directors, and when DDOT has come before us, I have pressed them, what are you doing in terms of analysis behind these deaths? And the accidents, not just deaths. The deaths are horrible, but the number of accidents and individuals who are injured is far greater. And what kind of analysis is there? I did that with my last answer, and I will continue to press DDOT to do more, because it's kind of hard to find the right solution or to implement the right strategies when there isn't really a good understanding on the part of DDOT of what the problem is. I was going to say before you said it that I think Vision Zero, the goal is absolutely the goal we should have, but with deaths increasing, it's like we're not getting there, or as you put it, it's been a failure. And so we have to figure out how to correct this. And working with the Transportation Committee Chair, as well as putting some pressure of my own on DDOT, perhaps that'll get them to think it differently.
And Commissioner Palmer?
Thank you. Vision Zero is indeed a failure. We have seen increasing numbers of traffic deaths and serious injuries and non-injuries. And this brings to mind the issue of the Vision Zero Omnibus, which is laudable legislation, and it's something that many council members signed on to. But part of what we're dealing with in terms of the challenges is the funding and implementation. So it's not just signing on to a piece of legislation. It's not just signing on to Brianne Nadeau's Walk Without Worry Act. It's not just signing on to Janice Lewis George's School Safety Zone Act. It is actually funding those laws, implementing them, and then conducting oversight of DDOT to make sure that they are actually implemented. And that takes council leadership and an empowered council to conduct oversight. So I think those are mechanisms that will help us reach Vision Zero. I don't think we need more studies. This is one of the most frustrating things about traffic safety infrastructure, is that we know the solutions. The suite of traffic calming solutions is known. We know them. We don't need to study them. We need to fund them and implement them. Thank you.
Should we, seeing as it doesn't look like we're going to meet this goal, should we be setting a quick follow new goalposts? Commissioner, I'd ask you first.
Thank you for that question. I think the goal is always zero. I don't think that changes. I think we maintain that goal and we act to achieve that goal, and we fund and implement mechanisms to reach it.
No, I don't think we should be changing the goal at all, but I will note this. I'm running for re-election as council chair, and it is true that the council can put a lot of pressure on the executive. But the whole issue with accountability is that DDOT is run by the mayor, and the council doesn't actually implement. We set policy, and I want to be clear about that, because otherwise you're being misled. We can set the policy, and we can do the oversight, and we can put the pressure on the agencies. I have direct oversight over the schools, and Lord knows I've been putting pressure on DGS to do better in terms of school maintenance. But we don't run DGS, and so we don't actually implement. What can we do to get DDOT to implement like Vision Zero better? And that comes from oversight, maybe more frequent oversight than we've been seeing, looking at some strategies through the budget, yes, and talking to stakeholders about other leverage that we can get over the executive to make them do this differently. DDOT's the one who's responsible for these intersections. And yes, we know a lot of the solutions. Yes, we do know a lot of the solutions, but we don't actually have an analysis of what is causing the death at these particular intersections or causing deaths in general. And we can do things geometrically, but there may be other issues as well, and we need to understand that.
DC provides a subsidy to Metro. Metro does not have dedicated funding. Each jurisdiction gives money to run operations. But right now, during the pandemic and over the last couple of years, Metro bus service has been cut. Metro rail services reduced for a number of reasons at the moment. But we're curious what you think Metro bus service and should DC subsidy increase? I guess we'll start with Commissioner Palmer. How often should buses come? Go on.
1 minute, okay. DC buses should run regularly so that they are reliable, so that we can actually get to the places we need to go in a timely fashion, whether it's school or work or doctor's appointments or the grocery store or anything else. I am a big fan and supporter of Charles Allen's Metro for DC, which is the program to provide a subsidy and invest money in bus infrastructure where it is most needed. much like the Vision Zero Omnibus and this other legislation that we have on the table, it needs to be funded and it needs to be implemented. It was first proposed in 2020, and here we are sitting in 2022, where we have the option to have better service and better bus infrastructure. And we really need to focus on the equity side of it, which is investing in bus infrastructure in the places that need it most, in Ward 7 and 8, and making sure that people can rely on the bus to get around, because we know that a lot of people don't have cars, and a lot of low income and people of color rely on the bus. Thank you.
And Chairman Mendelson.
Thank you. This might be more than a 1-minute answer, but we'll try to stick to it. So first of all, I was a co-introducer. I am a co-introducer of Councilmember Allen's Metro for All bill, because I believe that we should do more to make bus service attractive to people financially to ride. We also need to do more with regard to bus service to make it attractive in terms of frequency and reliability. Those three things, the cost as well as reliability as well as frequency. There is dedicated funding. It's not the entire budget. The dedicated funding was something that I negotiated with senators from Maryland and from Virginia to get that legislation through. So the three jurisdictions came up with roughly $500 million that Metro, dedicated funding that Metro can borrow against to leverage roughly $1.5 billion in infrastructure improvements. What bus service looks like to me is frequent and reliable, and where I would like to see
thumbs up or thumbs down. And so no.
Chairman.
So Chairman is saying no. Commissioner Palmer is saying yes.
you know, these are not yes or no answers. For instance, if I believe collective bargaining agreement, and so we can't just simply cancel the collective bargaining agreement and choose wages. Better wages for circulator? Absolutely.
They're in the midst.
Okay.
And this is part of their
And
ask.
if they
And so it
come up
sounds
with
like you
more,
support them.
If I absolutely support the getting more wages.
All right, thank you for clarifying that. So now we'll get to the short question part of this.
Yes, for sure. Now, this will be shorter questions, 30-second answers, that sort of thing. And we will start with a question on Metro, which is going to be facing a budget shortfall in FY24, which is not this year, but fiscal year next year. But it has, like I said, no dedicated revenue for operations. I believe the tri-state agreement is for capital funding, so that will fund new tracks and maintenance and whatnot, but not the actual service. So would you support a larger local subsidy for Metro if they propose to cut service? And if so, where would you find the money? Let's begin with Commissioner Palmer.
Thank you. I support more money for Metro. I support more money that improves service and reliability and brings people back to Metro. It's very hard to use lately. It's extremely hard to get around. If you're transferring, it can take you hours to get somewhere. I think it has to be reliable to pull people back in. If we lose too much ridership and we become too car dependent, the city really shuts down in terms of the ability to move around. Where the money comes from is more complicated, but we need to find it and fund it.
Chairman Mendelson.
Well, knowing where to find the money is kind of important to answering the question, but I will say this, over the last couple of years, there have been proposals before the council to add a route or increase frequency on a route, and that requires more dollars. I put those dollars in the budget. So when we've had discrete proposals for increased frequency or a new bus line, I have supported that. I've said this several times. I think that with all of our transportation issues in the city, the greatest solution, the single thing that will be most effective is making public transit more attractive. And that's not just rail and bus. I was on the short clock, thank you.
Great ender. Moving on. Do you support removing police from all or some traffic enforcement? And how will you balance the need for traffic enforcement and the known danger of police violence towards Black and brown drivers while in office? Let's start with Commissioner Palmer.
Thank you. I do support removing traffic safety stops from the police and moving it to DDOT or another entity, maybe DPW. I think this is an important change that's reflected in the Police Reform Commission's recommendation, so it is supported. And part of balancing safety is working on enforcement and traffic fines that escalate based on the severity of conduct in driving and working from a fine structure based on safety.
Chairman Mendelson.
There was some applause over the Police Reform Commission. I appointed the Police Reform Commission, and I'm very proud of the work that they did and their recommendations. The question, as I heard it, is would I support withdrawing or removing police from all traffic enforcement? I would not support that. I do think that a lot of routine matters, including like intersections and so forth, that's not where we should be using our police. But there are occasions where there's something going on with traffic where it does require a police officer, and I would not want to say, oh no, in all cases, no police officer.
And that police report, or police commission report came out, I believe, about a year ago about this time. So looking forward to what happens with that. What's that? No, I'm just opining. My next question is streetcar related, which our H Street streetcar is sometimes maligned, and we're wondering how you would improve the DC streetcar, and would you support building the extensions currently planned for Benning Road and also going out west towards Georgetown? Commissioner Palmer.
Thank you. I support the extensions. I support the work of the advisory neighborhood commissioners and community leaders who have led that and built consensus around it. I think the high quality and dedicated nature of the service is important. That's part of why we've seen challenges in the past, is that the quality of the service and the infrastructure is not, is substandard. But I also want to note that we focus on this project a lot in terms of Ward 7 because Ward 7 is a transit desert and doesn't have many alternative options, and we need to put more traffic safety and transportation options on the table for them.
But if you support ANCs, then you would know that the ANC east of the river doesn't want to see the extension over to East Capitol. They would like to see the extension end at Minnesota Avenue with the metro there, which is what I think would be the best solution, although that is not what DDOT is pushing or the mayor is pushing at this point. But to be honest with you, I don't support the extension to the west. I have seen the streetcar balloon in its cost and tank in terms of its popularity. A lot of objection to it. I think the streetcar on 8th Street is a good thing and should be supported and should be completed on the eastern side.
But not on the western side.
Well, it ends at Union Station. There should be a better connection at Union Station. I still remember the guy from DDOT in my office telling me it was just few days and they would have the agreement to pull right into Union Station. It was a lie, as was a lot around the project.
And it ends at the bridge.
Yes.
Now to carbon pollution. If elected, name one policy that you will champion that will do the most to reduce carbon pollution. Specifically,
Well, there are a lot of policies, and the council adopted legislation in 2018, which I believe I was a co-introducer of. And I keep saying that because it speaks to where I am on issues and the fact that I support it, improving legislation and policy that will affect to the good climate change. But I would say right now, because the clock is going to ding on me, is EV, and I've been leading the charge to get Metro to convert its fleet sometime in our lifetimes. That's a bit of a joke. I actually mean with this decade to convert its fleet to electric vehicles.
And currently their target is 2045, so.
right, so how do we speed up the process?
Well, let's see. I nominated the council, confirmed Tracy Haddon-Lowe as a member of the Metro Board. She strongly supports electric buses. And I've had an oversight hearing on that. I will have more hearings to put pressure on WAMATA. I'm toying with the idea of whether there's something we can do in the budget to put some pressure on WAMATA to move more quickly. I'd like to see this happen sooner, but it's a matter of time that public pressure is going to say to WAMATA, you've got to speed this up. Yeah, 2045. Los Angeles, as I remember, is something like 2030.
Thank you.
That's correct.
And Commissioner Palmer.
Thank you. Do I get a little extra time on that one?
Sure.
In terms of reducing emissions, Metro for DC is the biggest answer to that. Improving and expanding bus service and making it more reliable, dedicated, high-quality transit bus lanes. That is the answer. I too support electric buses, and I think it's a positive move, and we have to move in that direction. But too often, the focus on electrification is used to distract from expanding and improving the bus service we have. And we know that buses, whether they are electric or not, are better for the environment, and supporting and expanding that service is essential to reducing emissions at a broader scale. Thank you.
Thanks. And that Metro for DC bill also would eventually give every DC resident $100 on their smart trip card to use transit services. Obviously, it would start with the most in need first, but the goal is to eventually give every resident a $100. We have so many differing needs in this city. We have got pedestrians, we've got cyclists, we've got scooter, we've got delivery drivers, we've got Uber pickups and drop-offs, we've got drivers, we've got just really anything that you can think of. And we're always curious on how you think about that. Who deserves priority? What's the most important paying attention to? So we'd like you to rank the following modes in order that you feel that should be accommodated in the district. And that's pedestrians, cyclists, transit riders, drivers, and then freight and other goods movement, I guess. And Chairman, we'll start with you. What's most important in the district to prioritize?
Well, I wouldn't prioritize with the understanding that that means to take away from others, but I would say bus service, public transportation, because that moves the most people, it gives people the most flexibility, it gives people an alternative to owning a car or driving a car. It has so many collateral benefits, public transportation. And it's also, in terms of volume, more people benefit from that. So I would put that first.
And Commissioner Palmer. Here, why don't you check?
It's working.
There we go.
Thank you.
Sorry about the mic troubles over there.
It is green, so it's, it should be working. So I will not rank those systems because I see traffic safety and infrastructure as an ecosystem, and that we move as people through many different modes. We all walk or roll in some capacity. We use sidewalks. Many of us use bikes. A lot of us use public transportation. And I do agree with the efficiency point there. What I will say is that I deprioritize commuter traffic and the idea that cars are meant to take us from from very far away into downtown. I think we need neighborhood-centered public transportation system.
Thank you. And I think the rest of that was, the intent with that question was, who think there's so much space and we can't always accommodate everyone, so who do we prioritize on that? And how do we keep these bus lanes and bike lanes clear of drivers of single occupancy vehicles? Is there, how do we, oh, and Sherman, why don't you start, given your reaction?
Well, some enforcement, but you know, I was driving down 8th Street the other day and the bus lane, and there's a delivery truck parked in it, and I'm thinking, where is somebody to ticket them? There needs to be enforcement, more enforcement. But I would also say, with regard to the bus lanes, there need to be more buses in them. That delivery truck is less likely to park in the bus lane if there are buses in front of them and behind them, and so we need to get more frequency, and that will help as well.
And Commissioner Palmer.
Thank you. I have a simpler answer. It's dedicated lanes. Dedicated bus lanes and dedicated bike lanes, which keep the lanes clear of other vehicles.
I have a question.
It's fair.
This
is a two-part question. How do you primarily get around?
Don't ignore me. We have questions.
We'll have audience questions towards the end. Thank
What are
you.
y'all gonna do about tenants? Tenants have a right to live fairly. Y'all gave all this money to these landlords, and we're still living in bad conditions. What are y'all gonna do about
Transportation related.
What about us? Answer the question,
Where's
please.
the money to stay DC? Where's the money at? Why did y'all
Why did y'all, y'all forgot about us. The same way we voted y'all in, we can vote y'all out.
They're asking about which is fair.
We understand.
Stay DC, which is a program that hasn't been, if I understand correctly, that money has dried up and they're no longer accepting applications.
No,
Right.
that's incorrect.
Oh, that's incorrect. I'm sorry.
Incorrect.
Oh, right.
It's a lot of state money that came to
Right, there's a lot of federal
places
dollars,
with
but the
no
council
name
hasn't
on the check
dedicated more. Right.
that's just sitting there. You will hear me today. You will.
Council Chairman, do you want to?
I can't quite tell. Are you still asking a question, or are you making a statement? Because if the question is about Stay DC, I think that the mayor was too slow to roll out Stay DC, but in the end, the district was actually among the top 5 states in getting the Stay DC money out the door. And the result is that the cities applied for more money from the states that didn't spend, and the city's gotten more money, and it's applied again, and it will be getting even more money than that. But Stay DC is just, and the federal dollars are limited, so we are looking at increasing funding through emergency rental assistance. Last year, I believe it was last year, I put through legislation to expand and make more flexible the access to emergency rental assistance. It was very limited and constricted who could apply for emergency rental assistance. We opened that up. We need to open that up more because ERAP, emergency rental assistance, is the local alternative to Stay DC and a long-term alternative to provide rental assistance to those who have fallen into a desperate situation and need rental assistance to avoid eviction and the consequences of eviction, and also to avoid becoming homeless. So
the problem is, though, that
I'm putting more
landlords are
money into
missing
ERAP.
tenants who have applied for stay. There's a landlord in Ward 7, Chris Donatelli, who gives heavily to several council campaigns, who is suing 51 people for $600,000 in Stay DC money that they applied for and were told they got. Where'd that money go?
Where did the money go?
Where did the money go?
Why aren't you guys looking into it? It's federal misappropriation.
Well, this is the first I'm hearing about that, so I can't say I looked into it.
Do your job.
Bullshit! You heard that over and over. People are being evicted right
It's
now.
the first I've heard of it. I'm certainly happy to look into it.
No, y'all know what you're
If
doing.
in fact money was paid and now they're being sued, I'm certainly happy to look into that.
Yeah, we're gonna have a tent in front of your house if you don't fix And you're thinking now the city's going to have more homeless people. Is that what you want? Children,
No.
because you're going to have a home. You're going to have a home. You're going to get that.
Thank you for showing up, and we appreciate the questions. For sure.
No rent!
But we do need to move on with transportation questions.
No medicine! No rent! We're tired of you! Where's the money at? What did you do with the money?
Buenas
Who
tardes.
do you care? Who do you work for?
Buenas tardes, señor concejal. En esta hora yo quiero pedirle que me escuchen, por favor. Yo tengo una pregunta para ustedes. Sé que ustedes han hablado mucho de transporte, mejorar la ciudad. Ahora mi pregunta es, ¿qué ustedes tienen en mano para ofrecerles a los residentes de los edificios que están en malas condiciones?
We just want to know, we've heard lots about transit, but a lot of us are living in slum conditions. We want to know what you can offer to tenants who are living in unhealthy slum conditions and suffering right now.
That's right.
People too. Son miles que los dueños de edificios han recibido de nuestras viviendas.
So we know landlords have gotten millions of dollars from the DC government. Meanwhile, we're living in slum conditions. We don't see any of this money being invested in our homes.
Nuestros apartamentos están llenos de moho, cucarachas, ratones, llenos de hoyos en las paredes. Y queremos saber qué ustedes están dispuestos a hacer por la comunidad.
We're living in unhealthy conditions. We want to know what been paying this money to our landlords.
Don't run! Don't run!
Yeah, we're going to come down and talk with you.
Why you running?
No, no one's
We're
running.
going
We're
to
gonna
come down and talk to you.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 10-minute break and prepare for the mayoral debate. Please grab a drink. We'll have the chairman and the commissioner come down and chat. Thank you.
We have Robert, who is a native Washingtonian, has lived in half the city's wards, 4, 5, 6, and 7. He's worked for Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton and Attorney General Carl Racine. He's now an out a title he's had since 2016. And we also have with us who's lived in DC for 20 years. He's a former ANC commissioner and came in second in the 2018 Democratic mayoral primary, garnering 11% of the vote. So before we move on to transportation, we do want to acknowledge that folks are here organizing because evictions, you know, they have resumed. The pandemic is still now, and well, you know, vaccination and such has made things easier. It's really hard. Folks are, you know, still hit hard economically, and is a rental assistance program that is no longer accepting applications despite the fact that we do have federal funds for rental assistance. So we're going to give organizers here with Stop on Slumlords and like also tenants here who are facing eviction a moment to ask candidates questions, because you know housing policy is very important too and cannot be ignored. So we gave someone the mic over there. Is that true? Yeah, maybe?
We have our own mic.
Of course you do. Silly me. All right. And why don't we, you ask a question and please.
Thanks,
first.
Amanda.
Oh, hi.
Hello, I'm from Park 7. I have one question. We just want to know, what are you guys going to do about evictions, rent increases, and bad conditions all over the city, especially the properties that Donatelli owns. You guys continue to give him money to develop around the city, but he isn't taking care of the building he owns. Like as for example, Park 7 on Minnesota Avenue. It's ran down with roaches, mice, the building is falling apart. You can see cracks in the walls. The foundation is falling apart. I am honestly afraid what happened in my is going to happen at Park 7 on Minnesota Avenue, because the building is sinking and it's falling apart, and no one is helping out. No one. We tried to get people to come out to pay attention to us, and no one is coming out to help out. That building is falling apart. The foundation is ruined, and no one is paying attention. So if that building falls, you guys is going to be on your heads, because you know about it now. And you continue to give Christopher Don and telling money to develop over, and he hasn't done anything to make the conditions in Park 7 livable. He is not. I need someone to pay attention to us.
All right. Councilmember White, you care to respond?
Yeah, thank you for raising this issue. I do understand your concern. In fact, I was at Park 7 late last night, because I was called by a resident and she said no one was listening, so I showed up. This wasn't my first time there. Before the pandemic, I was called there for concerns, and I worked on those concerns. What I saw last night was concerning. There were many structural and safety issues that I noted. There were rodent and infestation issues, many other issues, including the fact that you can't even use the community. It seems like what's happening there should not be happening. So again, I was there just last night. I haven't been able to diagnose the issue and work through it. I do understand there are several lawsuits, so what I'm looking to do is see what role the council can play to help address this issue. But the point that you're making, that the city is continuing to do business with somebody that residents are saying is essentially a slumlord, is abundantly concerning to me. So I am looking into that, and I will continue to show up and try to be helpful.
What about the first half of the question, though, about eviction and about rent increases? That was part of the question, too.
I think we also want to give Mr. Butler a chance.
And thank you, Amanda.
Yeah.
First of all, let me say this. We need to do more than show up. We need something. We need to do something. It's very important that our city leaders stop passing the blame. We have so many city leaders say that our city has failed us, but yet they're serving the city in the capacity of council people and mayors. When we show up, we've got to punish these people. We can formulate emergency legislation to make sure these slumlords are punished and sent to jail, because people's lives depend on it. That's the type of strong force and political backbone that you need from the leader of this city. Folks, and some of the folks in that group tonight I recognize, and they know my strong stance on these things. Anna, you can tell them about me, that I will stand up to those slumlords, that I will stand up to those bad people that think they can do anything. We need a strong mayor who's not going to play nice guy. I'm tired of our city leaders playing nice guy. I promise you, I'll be with you every step along the way. We will force the mayor to fund Stay DC. We will also ensure that anyone that has back rent with ERAP or wants to apply for ERAP is enrolled in that program, and effectively we cancel rent in this city.
Thank you for that. And I'm just going to say, today the council's COVID task force chaired by Councilmember Allen and Vince Gray recommended that select evictions pause. So that is currently being debated in the council, and we'll see where that goes. With that, we really want to start our transportation discussion, because that's also really important, and we're seeing record high number of traffic fatalities, and so we want to resume that conversation out of respect for the folks who came. But we do appreciate, again, the organizers for coming and showing up. And so thank you. We're gonna keep opening remarks, because we want to get to the questions. We want to know what you think about transportation. So my first question for you.
Actually, Amanda, I just want to note, we have two candidates here tonight. We have invited, including Mayor Muro. Member Treon White. They did not RSVP to our invitation, so we will hear from Councilmember White and Mr. Butler tonight. But just wanted to note that everyone was invited. All right.
That's Oh yeah, and we're also having Alex here, keeping time. We're gonna keep a close eye. Yeah, we're gonna keep a close eye on the watch because we are strapped for it. It's 8:20, and we're not trying to have you guys stay here all night. We're not gonna do that yet. All right, first question. So the district is not on track to meet its Vision Zero goal of 0 deaths by 2024. It's a failure. What would you have done differently as mayor? Let's start with Mr. Butler, please.
It's my turn. Tricky. Vision Zero has been an abysmal failure. As mayor of this city, we need to ensure that Vision Zero is fully funded from a first point. The second standpoint, we need to ensure that it has adequate oversight to ensure that the funds that are being given for Vision Zero are being dispersed properly. In addition, we need elevated pedestrian walks, speed humps, bump outs. We need these things to ensure that not another life is lost. For all 5 years that Vision Zero has been in effect, it has gone backwards. We will ensure in our first 100 days that we have protected bike lanes throughout the city, elevated crosswalks, bump outs, pedestrian islands, an everyday thing to ensure that not another life is lost on our streets.
And Councilmember White.
Thank you. So the issue with Vision Zero is that so many of us, too many of us, know people who have died because of traffic violence or who have come too close. The problem is that Vision Zero didn't just fail this year, it didn't just fail last year, but 6 years that Vision Zero has been implemented, we have seen traffic fatalities, pedestrian fatalities, bicycle fatalities rise. We have a mayor that is focused on gimmicks and not metrics, saying the right things but not doing the right things. We need a mayor who's going to be serious. What we should have done years ago, before so many lives were lost, we should have made the infrastructure changes that were necessary. We tried Vision Zero, and the first year it was clear that it was working, and we should have made a change then, before there were unnecessary lives lost. As mayor, I'm going to be serious about protecting our residents, protecting pedestrians, protecting cyclists, but also making sure our policies work and that we are not ruling by gimmicks, but we are ruling by being focused on the people.
Thank you. 2 quick follow-ups for both candidates. Councilmember White, obviously we are trending upwards on deaths. We're not going to hit the 2024 target date to have 0 deaths. Do we need to change that date? Do you feel like a date is important at this point?
No, a date is not important. What is important is a new mayor who's going to take this issue seriously. As I said, Vision Zero failed a long time ago. At this point, this requires infrastructure changes, and those infrastructure changes have to happen quickly. We cannot lose any more lives unnecessarily. As mayor, you have to know I'm going to take this issue seriously, but I also understand how government and policy works. We can't do this in 100 days, but we can do it quickly. We need someone in office who knows how to move government, who knows the urgency of this issue, and who is not going to continue to see lives lost unnecessarily in our city.
Thank you. And Mr. Butler, would you set another date, or how would you handle our current failure?
Someone in government that's been in government for the past 8 years, and we have a council member who's been in government for 6 years himself. Have we seen this stuff move? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Do you want more of the status quo, or do we need a change that's going to work, that's not stifled, whose vision isn't stifled on the possibilities that we can do? As I've said, in the first 100 days, we will tackle this issue to ensure that not another single life is lost. And yes, we will put a date on it.
Thank you. And Mr. Butler, I have a follow-up question for you. In doing research for this forum, I looked at your Instagram, and 3 days ago you posted a video from the driver's seat recording, I think, a plea to get maybe donations, I can't remember exactly, but why did you record a video from your driver's seat when we know the perils of dangerous distracted driving?
And that's a fair question. That's a fair question. And let me first do this. Let me apologize for doing that. That was something I shouldn't have done. But we need a mayor that can apologize and express contrition. I will say this. There was Facebook and Instagram Live on, and I was not looking at it. If you all look at the video, you'll see my eyes do not make contact with the video. But let me say this, as an admonition to my own self, I will not do that in the future. How about that? How about that? How about a real apology from a real leader with the political backbone?
Thank you. Amanda.
And now to the budget. Councilmember White, Mayor Bowser released her budget in recent weeks, March 16th. What of her transportation budget do you support? What do you oppose?
So the mayor released another budget. The budget doesn't look that much different than other budgets. We have had record-setting budgets every single year of this administration, but we have not solved a single problem. What that tells me is that in this city, we don't have a money problem, we have a leadership problem. This is a budget full of gimmicks, full of promises that are not going to be met, and what the council has to do and continue to do is clean up the mess of this mayor who continues to be reactionary and jump into action when it is politically convenient. And so, I appreciate the money that the mayor has put in for transportation, including money for dedicated bus lanes. What I'm suggesting are two things. One, this is too late. We should have been moving this years ago. And two, I don't trust this administration to implement because they have a pattern of failing on implementation.
Is there anything that specific that you would put perhaps in hats? I'm looking for specificity.
So, I mean, being specific with the mayor's budget is complex because there's a lot of money in a lot of things. I like the money for dedicated bike lanes. I like the money for dedicated bus lanes. I think that's a good thing. The issue is not the money in this budget. The issue is the implementation and actually achieving the goals that we set. So it is not a money issue. It's a leadership issue.
And Mr. Butler.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm going to refrain from stating with specificity because it's really not that important what I think about the budget, but what the agencies think about the budget. This budget will go before in the coming weeks through all of the agencies. They will look at it, how the money's allocated. It will go back within me with the committee of the whole and determine where monies were appropriately spent and allocated. And so that's what's most important to me after we hear from all of the stakeholders and the agencies.
Thank you. Our next question hopefully will act as your vision statement. We want to know how do you envision the best way for district residents and visitors to get where they need to go? What should our transportation system look like in DC? Councilmember White.
The District of Columbia should be a multimodal city. This is something that I've worked on for my entire career. This has to be a place where you can get around on public transportation, whether it's our Metro bus or the train. It needs to be reliable, it needs to be quick. We need connected network of bike lanes, most of them protected across our city, so people can move around on bikes. This has to be a place where people can walk safely without fearing for their lives. These are achievable goals in this city, one of the wealthiest jurisdictions in the nation. This is an achievable goal, but we still have not gotten as far as we could have gotten. Over a decade ago, I was a Capitol Hill staffer working to get federal funds for bike lanes. We still don't have connected bike lanes. Over a decade ago, I was a Capitol Hill staffer working to get federal funding, consistent federal funding for Metro. We're still struggling to piece this together. It's not always the district's fault. We have, Congress has to do their part, districts have to do their part, but there has to be leadership from the District of Columbia if we're going to get there.
Thank you.
I believe there must be a continuity of transportation in this city. That's why I've moved, and I'm the only candidate and one of the few mayoral candidates of a major city in the United States that's moving for DC's transit system to be entirely free. One thing we already know right now, we've decriminalized jumping the turnstiles or getting on a Metro bus. So why not make it free? We're doing all of this chatter about giving vouchers for $100, But we know that black and brown people use the metro systems and our busing systems 85% of the time to get to work, doctor's appointments, schools, groceries, those things. We also know our wards east of the river have lack of adequate transportation, and economically, they are lower than the west of the river. We know the median income east of the river is $40,000, west of the river it's $120,000. What we need is continuity in transportation, and I will, in the first year as mayor, push for an all-free metro system.
Thank you. Quick follow-up on that. How do you intend to pay for free transit?
We're asking, Jordan, we don't have a toll like many states do. What I believe we should do is work with our federal partners to ensure that Metro raises the fare on the millions of people that put a strain on our infrastructure daily that do not pay for that strain on the infrastructure. So DC residents would get a pass to literally ride the Metro for free, while the price and fare would go up for those people from Maryland and other jurisdictions that put a strain on our infrastructure. How about that? We can't tax them on our highways, tax them on the Metro.
On that similar note, so the mayor's office acts as a bully pulpit on Metro issues. So how would you use that role? How do you persuade Metro to do what you want, because it's not always successful? Mr. White, why don't you go first?
Thank you very much. The mayor's office should act as a bully pulpit on Metro, and the District of Columbia must be the leader on WAMATA. Here's why. Because our region and our economy depends on WAMATA. We don't want to push people away from riding public transportation. That's a bad idea. But our brother and sister jurisdictions, Maryland and Virginia, remember that their legislators their legislatures are not this immediate area. So Richmond doesn't care as much about WAMATA as we do in DC. Annapolis doesn't care as much about WAMATA as we do here in DC. So the bully pulpit, the leadership role must be played by the mayor of the District of Columbia. I was co-chair of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments when we developed the WAMATA Compact. We should have had more leadership from our mayor, but in the absence of that leadership, as a legislator, I played a leading role. When I was working on Capitol Hill, I worked all the time with regional leaders, building and maintaining those relationships to make sure we had the funding for WAMATA that we needed.
Thank you, Mr. Butler.
DC relies on WAMATA, WAMATA relies on DC. And so we are putting money into the coffers of this system, and I do believe that DC's mayor should lead WAMATA in this regard and decision-making when it comes to what happens in the District of Columbia.
And a follow-up, 1 second, sir, we're gonna get to audience questions. Councilmember White, a follow-up to you. I mean, you chair the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities. You have oversight of WAMATA. Can you offer an example of when you used that as chair to hold WAMATA accountable?
I don't have oversight over WAMATA. It's in the committee of the whole, but I have played an important leader. I did 2 years ago. I did for maybe about a year. I had oversight over WAMATA, but that was 2 years ago. In that short period of time, here's what I did. I held hearings on WAMATA to explore pre-pandemic accelerating our dedicated bus lanes, accelerating moving to an all-electric fleet, accelerating and starting to explore ideas that make bus transit more reliable, like rear boarding, things that they were saying were difficult, but then the pandemic showed us that, hey, we can actually do some of these things. I continue to push them to accelerate their time from flying for moving to an all-electric fleet. So even though I only had oversight over WAMATA for about a year, I used the heck out of that year.
All right, great. We're going to try to reclaim our time here. So we've got a lightning round. We're going to ask yes or no questions. Thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no. Don't give me the wavering. It's a yes or no question. And our first question is about congestion pricing, which Mr. Butler talked about a little bit, but a congestion pricing program would charge drivers for driving in downtown DC. This is something that the council has ordered a study on. Do you support implementing a charge on driving in downtown DC? Mr. Butler, yes, and Mr. White, both yeses. Okay.
All right. DC circulator workers are currently fighting for a contract with a private contractor that DDOT hired for operations and maintenance. Will you commit to putting money in the budget to fund wage and benefit parity with WAMATA transit workers? Yes or no? Both yeses.
Great, and our next question is about the Clean Hands Law, which deals with withholding licenses if you don't pay tickets and whatnot. Currently, you can, how do I best describe? You can't get your license taken away for having outstanding debt with ticketing. Do you support that program? Yes or no? Robert White says no. Mr. Butler says yes. Can you expand on that just quickly?
Yes, these are for like parking tickets. If there's a serious equity issue, and I've worked on this with my colleague, Councilmember Silverman. There are some people who get parking tickets, can't pay them, and lose their ability to get to work. That doesn't further them. It doesn't further equity. Now, do we treat them and people who drive recklessly the same? We absolutely do not. But because the question was a blanket question, I wanted to make sure I answered it appropriately.
So, a dangerous driver, you would be in that ticket.
Absolutely.
Mr. Butler, would you expand a little bit?
Maybe I misunderstood your question. I think maybe I misunderstood your question. Mine was a yes for allowing people to continue to have their driver's license, even despite the fact that they have tickets.
And do you have any distinction between, say, a dangerous driver that has, say,
Well,
$10,000 of tickets or something like that?
There's certain, for egregious drivers driving, I definitely believe, and let me expound on this a little bit. I really do believe that DC must get reciprocity with Maryland and Virginia to punish bad drivers in the District of Columbia.
And for folks that might not know, DC currently does not have reciprocity for those automated tickets, meaning those drivers can come in, speed and not have consequences.
All right, and now we're going to move to the short question portion of this, where we ask that you keep your answers brief, 30 seconds for each question. So the first is about the streetcar. How would you improve it? And do you support extensions to Benny Road and Georgetown? First, Mr. White.
How does it improve the streetcar? That's a hard question. A lot of folks know I'm historically not a fan of the streetcar. We bought cars without developing a plan. Then we laid tracks without a path, and we took up those tracks and we laid more tracks that blocked the delivery lanes. We did all that without researching federal historic preservation laws or right-of-way laws, and so it's been a catastrophe. It's been a leadership catastrophe. The thing that I would do, the only possibility of improving it is a mayor who actually pays attention to details. But this is something that we must make sure that we are focused on transportation equity and equity east of the river.
I've said it before, a transit system that is free. The streetcar is currently free. It operates, and we intend to operate it fully into Ward 7 and extend it downtown to K Street so that people can transverse. That will revitalize the city's corridors economically in Ward 7 and in A. It's very important that we expand our streetcar, and I would expand the streetcar not to Georgetown, but to downtown to K Street.
Thanks for that answer. That was a sponsored question from our friends at the Friends of DC Streetcar. Our next question, we have a couple specific questions for each of you, so you don't both have to answer, but Mr. Butler, I think on your campaign website you talk about you run a lot in the district. I think you said 40 miles.
I run about 40 miles a week.
And
yes.
I'm a cyclist. I wish I was a runner, but I'm not. But I have a question. Where do you feel safe running in terms of in the district?
Let me be clear. On our streets, I've had a number of near-death experiences on our streets. I am not as fast as I used to be. I'm 47 years old, but I'm still running a lot. And I will tell you this, dodging cars is not fun when you get up in age. But I find once I can make it to the mall from my home in Trinidad, then I find it safer to run out there. Because obviously there are no cars. We really need a mayor that's going to focus on traffic safety.
And Mr. White, when you were running in 2016, your transportation platform stood on fixing Metro's poor reliability, filling potholes, and creating a unified bike lane network. Do you think you achieved those things?
As part of the legislature, I've worked aggressively on all of these things. Again, I've worked on connecting bike lanes before I got to the council. I've worked on it on the council as aggressively as I can. I've made sure that the DC Department of Transportation has funding to fill potholes, to do it aggressively, but implementation falls on the mayor. I have been disappointed and frustrated with lack of progress from this mayor, and that's why I am running from being a council member to being the mayor, so that we have somebody who can actually implement. The council doesn't fill the potholes. We need a mayor who's going to actually do that.
And just a quick follow, I mean, what transportation policy that you had a hand in that you champion are you most proud of?
Many transportation policies. Again, I've been the lead in the council on aggressively pushing to accelerate electrifying our bus fleet. This is something I've been working on. I was the leader on the council working to get the WAMA compact done along with Chairman Mendelson. I worked aggressively with Metro to accelerate dedicated bus lanes, and we've made some progress on that. So from the council position, I've done everything the council can do to push those issues along, even some of those things that really should have taken our mayor, but I've done everything I can from the council.
Thank you.
We had a tragic incident in the district a couple of weeks ago where a driver crashed into a streetery and killed 2 people. DDOT is in charge of the streetery program. Obviously, the mayor has some input on how that is run. Do you think we need safer infrastructure to protect streeteries, or how would you basically make that an enjoyable and safe place to be? And we can start with Mr. Butler.
Sure, thank you for the question, Jordan. What we must do, we have an antiquated, protracted process to get traffic calming and safety measures through DDOT at this point. It can literally, if any of you have ever dealt with it, it can take years to get traffic safety and calming measures through. What we must do is cut that process to a fraction of the time. Why? Because people's lives depend on it. So we should absolutely ensure that we have, one, better oversight over the program, a program that moves a lot quickly, and that we can get DDOT to act. Not a year, not 2, but in a month or 2.
And Councilmember White.
It was clear as soon as the pandemic started and we started opening streeteries that this was a program that was long overdue and something that we should make permanent. It was also clear at that time that there were dangers because these were in streets and sometimes, unfortunately, tragic things like this happen. And so the city should have taken an approach very early in the pandemic where we assisted restaurants with creating the infrastructure they need to keep diners safe. We can use jersey barriers, we can use many other things, and we must do this now because, again, even though, God willing, the pandemic is mostly behind us, I hope that streeteries are not, and our local businesses need that support.
All right. So we got a lot of transportation modes. And we're wondering who should DC's roads accommodate? Who should they prioritize from the following? Pedestrians, cyclists, transit riders, drivers, or freight? Mr. White.
Look, we have to prioritize. We want to keep everyone safe, but we have to prioritize the most vulnerable. You know, when I'm biking with my girls who are 5 and 3, we love it, but it's dangerous sometimes. My wife will not let me take my daughters to school on the bike because there are no protected bike lanes near our house, and that's dangerous. When I'm walking with my girls, we're so much more cautious than I think we should have to be. But this is the experience that so many people across our city feel. And we have to make sure that it is not so difficult to make the infrastructure improvements we need to keep people alive. It shouldn't be this hard in this city.
I agree, and I echo the Honorable Councilman's sentiments that the most vulnerable must be protected first. And it's clear that obviously if you're walking or you're on a bike, you're most vulnerable if you're hit by a car. So therefore we must really ensure that we have protected bike lanes, elevated sidewalks, elevated pedestrian crosswalks, those things that will ensure that we will not lose another will finally make the grade.
Thank you. And the DC government has a pretty extensive plan, 20 miles of protected bike lanes. But I'm curious, where do you think those bike lanes are most needed? Can you name a specific street that you'd like to see that, Councilmember White?
With the 20-mile goal has been there for a while and moving slowly. But frankly, we need the bike lanes across the city. But if you look at 15th Street, for instance, you know, you can go a good long ways and then you just get dumped out. And so what we have to do is complete the network. Mr. Butler?
I would say 16th Street Northwest, and we would need protected bike lanes along there.
And what about bus? I mean, the protected bus lane, or exclusive bus lanes are kind of a newer concept in the district. They are starting on 16th, there's some on MLK, but where else is that needed in the district? Councilmember White?
The easy answer is everywhere, but this is a place where we can focus on equity, right? So a lot of hard work, and shout out to the people who really pushed and pushed and pushed to get a dedicated bus lane on 16th Street. It looks like we're finally going to see that moving more quickly. But what about east of the river, where we're hard to get around and from one side of the river to the other? But this is something we really need across our city.
Any particular street east of the river?
All of them. I mean, let's,
Well, that's easy to say.
I mean, to the river, but whether or not those are the best ones for the dedicated bus lane. But major thoroughfares, Good Hope Road and MLK, I think, are two good places to start. But there are other very dangerous, far out places that need dedicated bus lanes. One of my aunts for years lived in far northeast. The problem was the bus stop was so far from her home, a bus stop, not a train station, that she couldn't get to work on time. So we need to be looking at dedicated bus lanes, but we also need these nodes to go up into our communities. So it all works as a network.
Thank you. And Mr. Butler?
Jordan, I appreciate your thoroughness in asking these questions. We know that the dedicated bus lanes work. We don't need another study. We don't need a study on a study. Let's put them across the entire city. And we need a mayor that's going to have political backbone to do these things, folks. If we know it works already, what are we waiting for? Just use a little common sense in running a city. That's what we need.
All right, we're curious how you deal with conflict. You know, say a protected bike lane on your choice of street east of the river, like, and a dedicated bus lane is not possible without the removal of parking or travel lane, and say people become very upset, which we know happens. So how then do you respond? What is the next step, Mr. White?
You know, as I've always said, as I've already said, we have to start with the most vulnerable. And sometimes we're going to have to lose parking spaces, and there may be other inconveniences. But again, we are a multimodal city, and there are going to be changes in the city. What I've tried to do is show leadership and make sure we aren't just talking at people and saying, this is what we're going to do in your street, but we do try to engage them. But we cannot let that engagement stop us from making progress.
So you move forward with the plan?
Yeah, I hope that was clear.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just one, Mr. Butler.
Thank you. Before we do anything, we will never be a government that shoves something at you. We will engage every single stakeholder to ensure that we hear every single stakeholder, get their input, and then make our determination. So to be very candid with you, I can't answer your question until we talk with all the stakeholders involved, which is something this city has failed to do repeatedly on numerous issues.
Thank you so much. I know this group is likely a multimodal group. They walk, they bike, they scoot, they Metro bus, Metro rail, everything. I'm curious, I think that was Jeremiah of WABA, so that's, you know. But anyways, I'm curious, you know, you guys are all around the city. What's your breakdown? How do you get places? How often do you take, you know, a certain thing? What percent are you driving? That sort of thing. Councilmember White.
So I grew up here, and the way I got around from the time I was in first grade is Metro bus. So that's how I got around. Then I got to junior high school, I bought a bike. That's how I got around everywhere. I used to bike from DC to the Appalachian Mountains every year, and then started going to West Virginia. Now that I have young kids and I have to drop them off at school and get downtown, I generally drive, and sometimes I take the bus, sometimes I take the train. I would say the majority of the time right now I drive.
All right, Mr. Butler.
Well, we already know that Jordan stalks my internet because he saw me driving and doing a live video, as he said earlier. Folks, I really don't do that, so please accept my apology that I gave earlier. But I drive, I use the Metro, I use the trolley, the street trolley. I live right on the line, so I use it quite frequently. And as you learned earlier, I run a lot around the city, so that's healthy for me, and it allows me to get places on time too, when I'm running fast enough.
Thank you so much.
All right, now we're getting to the audience questions. Thank you for those who RSVP'd and submitted some. Charlie Olson asks, what is the plan for providing electric vehicle charging for folks living in apartment buildings? Let's start with you, Mr. Beller.
Yeah, I believe that with the increased purchases of electric vehicles, that every apartment building needs one, must have one. That also we must ensure that our busing fleet becomes electric before our time frames right now. I think we're talking 2030. As mayor, I will push to ensure that date is accelerated, and you can hold me to dates, and you can commit me to a date on those things.
And Mr. White.
I think actually, interesting coincidence. The meeting I left before I came here, the last question somebody asked me, she said, I live in an apartment building and I have to pay to use the charging station. I said, that's ridiculous. Every building should have charging stations, and we should have public charging stations across the city. And I should say we do not have enough east of the river right now. This is a critical moment on climate. And the government must incentivize electric vehicle usage. And so when people are looking to say, maybe I'll buy an electric vehicle, maybe I won't, and they start to look around to see how difficult it is to find a charging station, that's a decision point that we can help. So we have to spread electric charging stations around the city, and we need them in every apartment building, and they must be free.
Thank you. Connor Garvey submitted this question, and actually I really like this one. He asked, do you support the creation of any car-free commercial districts? I don't believe DC has one that I'm aware of, but would you support an area that no cars allowed? Mr. Bullock.
No.
Why?
Because I think it's a mode of transportation. We just talked about several modes of transportation. There are people that are invalid, handicapped, those sorts of things that need a car to take them up to the door of a building. Let's not get too high and mighty with us, with our capabilities, able to move and walk freely. There are a lot of people that rely on automobiles to take them to the very door of where they need to go.
Thank you. And Councilmember White.
Before the pandemic started, a lot of people said, look, we can't lose any parking spaces, we can't lose any street lanes. And then the pandemic came and we had to start eating outside, and we realized, you know what, we can figure this out. And then we saw parts of our city like Adams Morgan that sometimes didn't have cars, and it became a nice place to hang out, right? If anybody has been to open streets on Georgia Avenue, like, people enjoyed that. So yes, this is something that we can do. If you look at Beach Drive, that we've shut down so that people can bike and walk. So we've got to be imaginative, right? This isn't about like pitting one group against another. Seniors have got to be able to get to their front door. That's not a question for anybody, right? But can we be imaginative, and can we reimagine some of our neighborhoods so that we are inviting more people to walk around, to be safe, to commute? You know, when I grew up in DC, it felt more like a community, even though we had fewer people. If we're going to do that again, we've got to really reimagine our neighborhoods, pull people in, give people a place where they can hang out, feel safe, and enjoy themselves. And we've seen some of that happen during the pandemic.
All right. And finally, Rudy Ray asks, how do you propose increasing the number of parking spaces for bicyclists, scooters in a way that preserves pedestrian access? Do you support mandating micromobility parking with new construction? And Mr. White, why don't you go first this time?
So with any new construction, I think that we have to require bicycle parking. I think that's just common sense. It's a way that people get around, need to get around, should get around our city. And so I think it's just something that we have to mandate.
And Mr. Butler.
And I concur with that. I will also say for the micro modes of transportation, we do need to ensure that apartment complexes accommodate those as well. I can't tell you the number of scooters on the street that I've almost fallen over while walking or running down the street. It really not only poses a liability for the city and for folks transversing, but I really do believe we need to ensure that complexes have spaces for all minor and micro modes of transportation.
Thank you so much. In also doing my research, I stalked Councilmember White's website a little bit. And I want to ask you about an experience that you wrote about as a child, which I didn't actually know about this. It sounds like you were in a very serious car crash when you were a young child. Can you tell us a little bit about that, kind of how it shapes how you think about transportation and transportation safety?
Yeah, a car crash shaped my life very significantly. When I was 8 years old, I was on my way to school. A truck hit a car on the opposite side of the road, hit it so hard that that car flipped up in the air, landed on top of ours. It split my skull, damaged my face, collapsed the roof of my mouth. I was medevac to the hospital and almost died. It took me so long to recover and get back to school that I failed the 3rd grade, and actually was so far behind I failed every grade from 3rd grade until my junior year in high school. So when I graduated from college and graduated from law school and had the opportunity to go to Capitol Hill and work on transportation policy, it was something that was very personal to me because I know how much something that we do every day, we're always moving, how much something like that can impact our lives and the lives of others. And I know that as a father now, like as much as I'm glad I wasn't a statistic, I don't want my kids or any other young people or frankly older people around the city to be statistics either. I just want to ask you kind of a similar question. I mean, it sounds like you've had some close calls out in the district. How do those close calls form your opinions of transportation policy?
Well, certainly they form my opinion with regards to the need for safety. We need more pedestrian islands. We need more bump outs. We need extended crosswalks by our schools to ensure that students have a shorter ways to cross the street. We need elevated pedestrian crosswalks. We need protected bike lanes. All of these things will save a life. We should not be having Vision Zero be this abysmal failure that it's been. We're better than that. We're the nation's capital of America. We can do better, and we need a mayor that will push for better.
All right, thank you, and thank you for answering all our questions. We'll now give you to offer some good work. Let's start with Mr. White.
Most important thing I want people to leave tonight is, I hear you. You know, nobody in here believes that it should be as hard as it is to make infrastructure improvements to keep people alive. I advocated for a stop sign in my neighborhood for years and years as the president of my civic association. I had to become a council member in order to get a stop sign to save lives of kids walking up the street to Paul Junior High School. And even today, I see neighborhoods come to me all the time saying, Councilmember White, we just want a speed hump, we just want a stop sign. These aren't luxuries. These are things to keep people safe and to keep people alive. We need a mayor who understands that government needs to move at the speed of safety, that it is important that we keep people alive. My experiences growing up here in the city and my experiences now as a dad trying to keep my kids safe are the same experiences that people across our city are seeing every single day. When we have a mayor that doesn't just start supporting a bike lane on 9th Street when it becomes a political liability, that's when we're going to start making progress. When we have a mayor who sets safety goals and says, you know what, if we're not meeting our goals, we're going to go back and change it, not continue with this senseless gimmicks, that's when we're going to make progress. When we have a mayor who understands how important transportation is to our city from a safety standpoint, from a growth standpoint, and who is willing to talk to people, to listen to people, to connect with neighborhoods, that is when we will be a safer, better, more transit-friendly city. That is what you will see from me as mayor. I'm somebody who knows the power of government. I've worked in the federal government and local government. I've worked in all 3 branches of government. I know the power of government and what we can do if we have a bold chief executive. We do not have that now, but on June 21st, we're going to turn that page, and this is going to be a new city. So I'm asking for your support in this race. We have incredible momentum, and this is going to be a city that is safer and that is serious about transportation and keeping our residents safe. Thank you all again for coming. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the questions.
Thank you all. I want to thank you all for coming and bearing the cool temperatures tonight. Jordan, Amanda, I want to thank you both. And I want to thank you for listening and genuinely listening to my policy ideas. This election is about 2 things. It's about the status quo, people that have held office for a multitude of years, and someone with bold ideas, not beholden to the establishment, with a plan for this city. or numbers and metrics that have all moved in the reverse. We have people using language like, our city has failed us, or we can do better. Folks, think about it. The last time I checked, our city has a mayor and 13 council members. And if you hear a council member says, our city has failed us, I hear that you have failed me. My colleague on stage here works for me. He works for you. So when I hear him say that our city has failed us, I hear him say that I have failed you all. We do not need, in my opinion, more of the status quo. We've done that before. When the current mayor ran against Vincent Orange, you heard the same political rhetoric from a career politician that was looking to elevate herself. We wouldn't be here right now if there were solid plans to reverse this. All the metrics in the city have gone in the wrong direction. If they had a plan, you'd know about it already. I'm asking you on June 21st to elect a new mayor and not do more of the same, because if you do more of the same, you will merely get more of the same. You can check my website out additionally at www.butler4dc. Vote June 21st. Thank you, God bless you, and God forever bless the soon-to-be 51st state.
Thank you both so much for coming, talking about the transportation issues that are so important in our lives. Mr. Butler, thank you. Councilmember White, thank you so much. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, which is Greater Washington, the Washington Area Bicyclist Association, MetroBar for hosting, and Amanda's going to give you a little bit about the election.
And thank you all for showing up and for submitting questions. We appreciate you too. Right, I mean, they've said it repeatedly, June 21st, primary election, but also remember mail-in ballots for registered voters are being sent May 16th, so look out for that. Thank you and good night.
Thanks so much, folks.